Good day. Welcome to Fairfield County Talk Radio. I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Shark Creative, made possible by good people like Tough Lawn Service and Fairfield County Tick Control. Also by Echo Systems Irrigation and Lighting, Gutter Brothers Home Services, Santa Fuel, and New England Motor Oil, MDM Sanitation. Good morning, Wilton Earthscapes Landscape Management and Development, Apollo X Pest Control, Dagny's Real Estate, and the Wilton Chamber of Commerce. We are joined here on the Cup of Joe political show by the mayor of the city of Stamford, David Martin. David Martin is a two-term incumbent, first elected in 2013, running for a third term in office this year. In order to get that third term, he has to get to the general election in November by winning the upcoming, just a few days away, Democratic primary. Mayor Martin, thank you for joining us here on Fairfield County Talk Radio. And I have to ask you, the Democratic Committee of the City of Stamford endorsed your opponent, State Representative Assemblywoman Caroline Simmons. What is making you keep on running despite the fact that the committee endorsed Ms. Simmons instead of you, the incumbent?
Well, good morning, John. Thank you for bringing that right up.
An interesting question.
It is, and certainly an appropriate one. Most people don't really know what's going on in sort of the Democratic or for that matter, Republican politics and how it works. But I'd start with this. This was a very narrow vote, 21 to 19, basically split right down the middle. And when you look at it more closely, what you'll see is that of the 21 people that voted for my opponent, only 4 of them have ever served in an elected position in the city of Stamford. Whereas of the 19 people that voted for me, 15 out of the 19 either currently or in the past have served in an elected position in the city government.
So what's the difference with that they have served and the others haven't?
They know more about what's happening in Stamford and about the uniqueness. They've seen the budget process and they see the challenges. They've seen some of the procedures that we use, whereas many of the individuals that have never been a part of that, they might come to a meeting or whatnot. They don't know what those inner workings are and how challenging it is. And the difference between a legislator who's working in Hartford that has no direct executive management responsibility or authority compared to people are sitting here and they're watching how things get done, or too often in many other cities, they don't get done. And they realize, hey, you really need to understand how this works. So when we look at our city committee, we have this split where those that really know what it means and how tough it is to deal with the labor unions and the labor laws and the budget and the other issues that go on that are some of it part and parcel of government and some of it the fallout of decisions made in the past, both good and bad. I think they have a deeper appreciation and a deeper respect of what we've done. They knew better where we came from, which was we were headed towards the disaster that has befallen many of the other large cities in the state, and we've turned it around. And I would say one other thing, John, and I don't know that everyone accepts this, but I think it's true. Last couple of years have been the most devastating, difficult years for this country because of the pandemic. And I've met any number of people that, they are, first of all, I'm very proud of the way our city has responded and what we've done, and we can talk about that more later. But nonetheless, I'm tired of this. I'm sure you're tired of it. Yes, and here I am with my mask ready to go if somebody comes into my office. I can't stand this, and we're fighting culture wars over whether or not you should have a vaccine or a mask. And I couldn't see people. I couldn't go out. They couldn't come in. I want to be done with this. We need a change. And that emotional feeling of we need a change. I'm seeing people come out of this pandemic with the joy of seeing that they can see people again and realize how important it is for us to all work together. But I'm also seeing people who are frustrated and angry, and I just want to change. I can't take it anymore. And I think that underlying problem is something that affects our whole nation, maybe the whole globe. I certainly see it in both the political sphere and the non-political sphere in Stamford. I take the responsibility. I'm the mayor. I've got to keep this city safe. That's the first responsibility. And so I do some things that are not popular with everybody, but I make those decisions. And at the same time, people are tired of it. And I think that while no one on the city committee would say that was driving them, not an absolute person, I tell you that I think that's part of the social and political dynamic that's across our country. And it may only be a little bit, but when you're on razor thin and you've got people that really don't know how we've come back from the brink and what we had to do to get there and how hard it is to run the local government, that little subtle difference could be part of it. At the end of the day, I went out and got my petitions. I was saying, this is tough. We're in August trying to go door to door to get petitions. People are on vacation. My own volunteers are on vacation. And when it was done, I was astounded. Even I was astounded. We had hundreds and hundreds of more signatures than we needed. We went right over the top. And I had both, it could only be Democrats that could sign the petition, but I had unaffiliated and Republicans saying, we'd love to sign your petition, support it. So it was in fact reassuring in a way to reach out to the people and hear from the people. And there was, one or two here or there that says, oh no, I understand the party went a different way. But for the most part, they were very supportive and believing in what we'd done and what we were doing and thought it was legit. So here we are.
Here we are 18 months into the pandemic. And what has the city of Stamford done to make sure people make it through the pandemic and to make sure people get vaccinated too? How much of a challenge has that been?
Are you kidding me? It's an enormous challenge. And I'll start by saying this. The city of Stamford was the first governmental entity in the state to do anything for the pandemic. And it actually started with January before when I talked to the operations people. I said, I want you to over-order cleaning supplies. I want you to over-order these things because I don't know what's going to happen. But if we have a few extra 55 gallon, or we had a few extra Lysol cleaning things around, we'll use them up. That's not such a big problem. But when the pandemic happened and everybody's out of PPE, hey, listen, we came very close. But in fact, we never ran out. We had it for everybody. We were taking in 55-gallon drums of stuff and mixing it up ourselves to get it to the schools so they could do their thing and all that stuff. We were the first community to actually implement policies related to the pandemic. And we did it before the first case had even happened in Connecticut. I can see it. In fact, my statement was, there is a storm coming and it's in the form of COVID-19 pandemic. And we started doing things and they weren't anywhere near what we needed to do, but we were the first to start. We were the first to start testing our first responders and setting up our own arrangements with testing organizations rather than letting it just be out there. We were the first to go to our nursing homes and saying, we now have testing arrangements. If you want to use those testing arrangements, we will help you accomplish that. And sure enough, some of the nursing homes jumped on it right away. Some of them managed to get their own arrangements, and some of them, unfortunately, kind of did nothing. We were, before the state did anything, we were the first one. We were cutting back occupancy limits. We were cutting back to 50%. And quite frankly, that does not take away from what Governor Lamont did, because when he jumped in, he made it uniform. He had less of this argument about what do you do here and what do you do there. And quite frankly, we are a highly complex, highly diverse city with a lot of interchange of traffic and people between other towns. In fact, that's true of most of Fairfield County, but particularly Stamford. Hey, I want these mandates. They don't just keep Stamford people safe, they keep Wilton people safe. And the Wilton people that come from Stamford will be safer here and we'll be safer. So the governor did a great thing. Then we move along and we're giving out hundreds of thousands of free masks. We're setting up testing locations, and we're doing it. The state is offering it. We're making it happen. And then we partner with Stamford Health, Stamford Hospital. We partner with CHC. And so we have 2 mass vaccination sites, one at the hospital. Then we work on Elmcroft. We have another mass vaccination site that we help set up with CHC at Lord and Taylor. And CHC is running the whole thing. But John, if I can speak between the lines, Lord and Taylor's site, they were bankrupt. And I can guarantee you, trying to get any agreements with an organization that is bankrupt And as now we're talking about the liability of what happens in their back parking lot when we're giving out vaccines, it would not have happened without the leadership that we were doing on the city side. We were setting up and in advance of everything we were talking about, we need pop-up locations. We're going to have to stop having them coming to us. We're going to have to start going to them. We got grants. And so we've been doing pop-up vaccinations at a lot of places. Recently, for the last few weeks, you could go to Leone Park, or you could go to Jackie Robinson Park, or you could go to Hunt Park, or you could go to the Cove Park. And we had vaccine sites set up there, reaching out beyond what the hospital could do or what CHC could do. And as a result of that, and just give me 1 second here, because I just got the new data this morning and I track it every day. We now have 89% of our eligible population in Stamford is partially vaccinated, and almost 80% is fully vaccinated.
Now that's way above the national numbers.
Oh, it's way above the state numbers. There's no city in this state over 70,000 that's done that. The numbers are actually better than Fairfield and in Greenwich. And if you think about it, I said we're complex and a diverse city. We have lots of areas where individuals are difficult to reach and have their own resistance to getting the vaccine. Those pop-up sites, we were placing in particular locations. We were going door to door to tell people, we've got the vaccine site here, come in. Oh, you can't come in today. It'll be here tomorrow. I'll come and knock on your door. And because of that, we've gotten that higher vaccine coverage. I'm more of the policy, statistical geek, how do you manage stuff, rather than the usual politician. And I've actually looked at this data. Those we're actually not using zip codes, we're using census tracts, but you get the same idea. Those census tracts in Stamford that had the most difficult to reach population, we're doing better than almost any comparable census tract in the state. And so, yes, those challenges exist, but we are beating what everybody else is doing. I'm so proud of it. Now, that doesn't mean that this Delta virus, this Delta variant, still isn't racing into our community like everybody else. And we were starting to climb. And so I was the first community in the state to say, my employees have to be fully vaccinated or they get a weekly COVID test. And that's hard to do. And we're in the process of doing that, but we made that announcement. I changed the rules about getting into the government center because the Delta variant was taken off. I then put in the mask mandate, which the governor, I think New Haven beat us by 3 days on that, but I had to give a little bit of time. And so guess what's happened? Our Delta variant, which was taken off, it popped down a little bit. And so now we're kind of moving sideways, but at least we're not taking off again. And so we continue to push. It comes back to what I said. My first responsibility is to keep this community safe. And you need to look at the science. This is a public health crisis. I don't know how many lives I've saved. I don't know whose they were. I don't know how many people have not had to go to the hospital or had long-term consequences. But I can guarantee you, there is no question in my mind, or in fact, for that matter, the people that we partnered with that work in other parts of the state. In Stamford, we'd say, well, let's put up a pop-up site here. We'd help pick it out for them. They were right on the money. And when they got there, we'd have a tent set up. We'd have the electricity set up. We'd have the internet set up so that they could do their job. I must have visited 200 different places over the course of this pandemic so far, not because there are cameras there, but because I want to see whether it's working or not. And we're making it work. So
schools have reopened, and we talk about the Delta variant. I saw a report that says schools across Connecticut are reporting probably higher numbers of COVID spreading amongst students, amongst young people than were expected when the school year reopened a few days ago. What do you attribute this to, and how can this be combated and handled? How should schools be handling all this entire situation right now? In person, hybrid, masks, no masks, everything optional, etc.
Two or three things. You asked 6 questions. Let me give you 12 answers.
Good.
Okay.
All wrapped into one general question.
Yes. The Delta variant has changed the game. The Delta variant is so much easier to spread. and it spreads in children much more than before. It's unclear, at least the data that I'm seeing, it's unclear if it's worse than the old one for children, but it is spreading more in children. You couple that with the legislature did not enable us to do remote learning. I mean, some one-off situations, yes, but broad-based remote learning we can't do because the legislature didn't authorize it this year. And now what we've got is, okay, so we in Stamford, and I worked with the Board of Education. We were doing contact tracing, helping them to do what they needed to do in the last year. And the superintendent says, I just gave them the health department. That's not really true, but nonetheless, we gave a lot of resources to keeping the schools as safe as we could. But the key thing is we were running this hybrid model. So about 20% of the students were remote learning only. About 40% of the schools were on there on every other day, and another 40% were the other days. So because you only had about 45% of the students could spread out more. And the students weren't really spreading it as much because they weren't catching it as much. Now we're coming back, and all the students are coming back, and you've got the Delta variant. And so what do you do about that? Well, first of all, I went to the Board of Education. When I made my vaccine mandate for city employees, I say you should do the same thing for the Board of Education employees. That was well in advance of now there is a rule that the governor has imposed that says there's a vaccine mandate for Board of Education staff, and that will happen September 27th. And I was basically recommended, let's get going on that before that happened. I've recommended that the mask mandates be reinstated. And you want to know something? That is a problem. I don't like it. But when you're that close together and you have a virus that can spread, and you've got to have that mask mandate, and you got to figure out how you have little mask breaks or when you can go outside. That's one of the challenges. But absolutely, we need the mask mandate. You know, that's the 1-2 thing that can do the most to stop the spread of this virus and protect your health and protect the health of others. Get vaccinated and wear a mask when you're in close contact indoors. So those are the number 1 and 2 things which I've been strongly supporting. The Board of Ed kind of went along with me. And then when the governor came in and says, let's align with the governor, I basically said, that doesn't make sense. You know, there's an issue here and you're going to wait another 3 or 4 weeks. But nonetheless, that's what I believe is most important. And if we can't get control of this, then, you know, I'm going to basically say the legislature has to come back in session and give us the remote learning back. And remote learning is not nearly as effective as in-person learning, no question about it. We want to do in-person. We want the effectiveness for the money we're spending and for the all-important need to educate the kids. But not if we can't keep them safe. And then you got to go back to the hybrid model. But right now we can't do that because we're not allowed to.
Mm-hmm. Mayor of Stamford, David Martin, running for re-election, Democratic Party primary, just a few days away. His opponent, State Representative Caroline Simmons, here on Fairfield County Talk Radio. Mayor Martin, what would the next Martin administration look like if you win this primary and then you get to November and beat a pretty popular guy running as an independent, one-time New York Mets and Boston Red Sox manager, Bobby Valentine?
Well, he's quite the celebrity, and I will tell you that many of the Mets fans, he took them to the World Series, didn't get it there, but they have some respect. But those Boston Red Sox fans, they're not as happy with him.
I know that. Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Uh-huh.
You know, read Big Poppy's book about the management of the team. You know, he's got a smile a mile wide and all that, but there is some real lack of understanding. I mean, he might know how to run a ball team. I know the Red Sox fans would disagree, but I don't.
Mets fans like myself think different. He did a great job, I thought, as Mets manager.
He got him there, but you know, he's been fired more times than I've been hired. And
right, like Billy Martin, same thing. Yeah,
exactly. But the key thing is, when I took office, this city was going the wrong way. We'd lost our AAA bond rating for, 50 or 60 years. We'd unfunded our pensions. Our unfunded debt was going up and up faster than, in fact, anything else. They hadn't invested in the roads. They hadn't invested in the schools, and much of the other infrastructure that you don't even know about. Nobody was doing anything. For instance, you want the streets to be clean? You need street sweepers. If you don't have street sweepers, or they're so old and broken that they're in the shop, then you can't sweep the streets. Guess what? I'm buying 3 new street sweepers right now. We basically changed this direction. We got our AAA back instead of getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the hole in those unfunded liabilities, which was going to take us into bankruptcy. The same bankruptcy that hit Waterbury, the same bankruptcy that Hartford basically went to. We've changed that around, and we've got a long way to go. It's not like, 50 to 60 years of financial hiding these liabilities that you snap your fingers and suddenly it's all turned around. But we've turned the boat and we are going in the right direction now rather than the wrong direction. I've tripled the amount of money that goes into roads. I've put more money to improving our intersections and changing how we design our roads, which will take a long time. I've more than doubled the amount of money we're putting into infrastructure for the schools because we uncovered a real maintenance issue that was going in the school that was allowing mold to grow, and basically saying, oh, there's mold in the schools. We're the people that brought that forth. This administration brought forth that challenge, and we're trying to address it. And they are right. There was mold. We are combating it, higher standards. And it kind of comes together in a little tiny picture, which happened just yesterday. We just had a flood. Ida came off. Lots of people have, damage in their basement, and maybe they've got insurance or they're going to have losses. We're trying to get FEMA reimbursement. We don't know that we can, but we also have losses within the city. You got 21, 22 school buildings, and water when I think it was 8.5 inches inside of 3 hours. It was the highest, most concentrated water since 1955. Guess what? There's lots of flooding. That's the way the world works. When you're facing something once every 60 years, you're going to have that problem. Well, guess what? So it got in through the front doors of some of the schools. So there's damage in the schools from the storm. And unlike before, where they would have ignored it, tried to dry it out, and basically start getting mold up behind the wallboard at these places, we're addressing it now. We've changed the management team, the management structure, the management philosophy. So we're going to address it. Guess what? We need $1 million. Where's the $1 million going to come from? The Board of Ed, are they going to fire 20 teachers in order to get their $1 million? Their budget is set. Well, it turns out that I have an understanding about how risk management works, and the city has a risk management function, but we don't have a reserve for property damage. We kind of work like a small insurance company, but we don't have a property reserve. Well, we should have a property reserve. And yesterday, the Board of Ed says, I don't have the budget. How do I get this done? I need to get started. I can't sit around 6 weeks while we talk about it and get approvals. How do we get this done in a way that is true to the spirit and the laws of the city of Stamford with regard to purchasing and budget? And I'm looking at risk management. And yesterday, we created a reserve fund for property damage. And I know I'm getting a little technical here, but that's part of what it takes to get it done. Create a reserve thing. We figured out that we're going to put $1 million into that reserve, which then the Board of Ed will draw upon. We'll get the insurance money or the FEMA money back to help put that reserve back. We will in the future charge the Board of Ed for their damages to ensure that they are motivated, incented to make certain that if it makes sense to stop this, they will stop it rather than just passing the costs along. That's how it all works. And at the end of the day, then we got $1 million. And where was the $1 million going to come from? The $1 million is going to come from the surplus that we generated last year. We've generated a surplus every single year. So we'll assign that surplus. We're not quite ready yet to assign that surplus, but we'll do that within a couple of months. And so we went to the Board of Finance chair, who just wrote a op-ed that I didn't even know about, which was over the top in terms of his endorsement and recommendation of me and all these things that we're doing. And so we went, and so we got him to sign, which has his authority, because I can't do this myself, to put $1 million into this reserve fund. We will then come back and use the surplus to fund it, which means that we're working on stopping and correcting the damage that came from Ida before it turns into mold. Nobody ever did that before. We did it yesterday in a couple of hours, and I had to step in, understanding how our risk management works, some of the things that we hadn't done in the past, recognizing the issues with the Board of Ed, what they're doing. And I talked to my girlfriend last night, so what did you do today? What did you do today? And I said, I was proud of the fact, and nobody's going to know about it, The kids walking through aren't going to know that there's not mold behind the walls. And how did we get it done? We got it done because I had the experience and the knowledge and worked with people that knew that we had to solve problems rather than stand around and complain about it. And that's why I run. We're getting it done. We're making it work. This is the most successful large city in the state, period. It is the most diverse and most complex state in the state. So that would make it harder, and we're still doing better. We're not playing the good old political games of who yells the loudest and this type of things that seem good, but in fact are pouring lots of money for a very little benefit. That's how we've been able to turn this around. It is smart management. It is without a lot of the, which political interest gets favoritism. And understanding with the knowledge and the commitment. And I say this, John, I'm not running to become president of the United States or the next governor or anything. I represent the people of the city of Stamford, and they are my client, if you will. And I am frustrated with our bureaucracy. I'm frustrated with the lack of support from the state. I'm frustrated by the restrictions and unfunded mandates, but I love this job because we're getting it done. We're making it work. I love this community where I've lived 40 years, raised my kids. My late wife worked at Pitney Bowes and then was a teacher at Northeast School. We co-founded a new organization and nonprofit to help kids on free lunch in third grade get to college. And we're succeeding. Can you see the excitement?
And I see that. There's no question.
I'm running again. Listen, we've done so much. You can't turn around 50 years of neglect without much support, because the state doesn't give us we get less support than any community over 100,000 in New England, and to the best of my knowledge, less than anybody in the country. We're doing this on our own. We're turning it around. And previously, because there wasn't the funding and you're making bad politically driven decisions, that's why we had our unfunded mandates and we weren't investing in the roads, we weren't investing in the schools, we weren't investing in street sweepers, and we're changing it around. I need another term. I'm not going to get everything fixed, but there is so much to do. We have got such a positive direction going. I want to get this done, and I love it every day.
The Stamford Advocate published an article, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit. Basically, they wrote in the article that critics' concerns would not be the same about your opponent, Caroline Simmons, if she were a man. How do you react when you see and read and hear something like that? If she were a man.
I don't know how to react to it. I will tell you this. I am the first mayor to have two women in the top levels of the cabinet of the government. Nobody ever did that before. And in total, the special assistants, the ones I lean to are women, because the ones that I'm talking to have experience. They know what they're doing. They've proven themselves in the past, and they prove themselves time and time again. I think that this idea that you misunderstand the difference between experience and anything else. The things that I talked about yesterday, the reality is that Bobby Valentine and the Republican who just dropped out of the race and my current opponent, none of them understand how our budget process works. They just don't. Bobby Valentine has experience managing a baseball team. My Democratic opponent does not have experience in managing any sort of organization of any size. She doesn't have management training that I'm aware of. She doesn't have economic training that I'm aware of. And I think that is a legitimate question to ask. I spent 26 years on the Board of Representatives, 8 as president. I spent 2 more years on the Board of Finance. I've served on a number of nonprofit organizations in the city over that course of time. And I accumulated a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. I was also in the private sector, working with large organizations, and then later on became the head of the senior partner of a small business that was serving large organizations. That experience, that knowledge, that expertise, that matters. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, or the color of your hair, or the color of your skin. That's not what matters. What matters is, can you do the job? Have you shown that you can do the job? And I will say this last thing, and I'm probably going too long on this. When you're looking for senior people in management and you get that resume, you want to know what they've done. You want to know the challenges that they faced and how they did. And even if they didn't win every challenge, I would rather have the person that took on 100 challenges and got 95 of them right than the person that talks about the positions that I held but can't tell me what I really did that changed the direction of anything. And that's how management works. You want people who can get it done. And one of the best judges, have they taken challenges before, tough challenges, and did they succeed, and did they learn from the times when they didn't succeed? And so that's my response. And that's my response.
Mayor of the city of Stamford, David Martin, best of luck to you in the upcoming primary, just a few days away. And let's see what happens with that. And I hope we get the chance to talk again before the general election in November. Best of luck to you. We thank you.
Well, John, thank you so much. I appreciate you letting me rattle on. You can see how I dive in. I'm a little bit of a geek. I have reasons for the things that I do, and those reasons are about what brings the most benefit. And you can see how excited I am. And yes, let's plan to talk again just before I win the general election, and then we'll talk again after we win the general election. That's my plan.
You are the living epitome of I love my job. Mayor David Martin here. Thank you. Here on Fairfield County Talk Radio, produced by Shark Creative, Cup of Joe Political Show. I'm John Marino. We are made possible by Tough Lawn Service, also Fairfield County Tick Control, also by Ecosystems Irrigation and Lighting, by Gutter Brothers Home Services, by Santa Fuel, New England Motor Oil, MDM Sanitation. Good morning, Wilton. Earthscapes, Landscape Management and Development, also by Apollo X Pest Control, by Dagny's Real Estate, and by the Wilton Chamber of Commerce. Catch all of our Fairfield, Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, and Orange County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Shark Creative YouTube.